Hi, I'm Zareen Ahmed. Welcome back to our YouTube channel. The Gift Wellness story began with the big inspiration in my life, which is my daughter, Halima. So from a very young age, Halima just loved charity work. Whenever there was a disaster in the world somewhere, she would bake cupcakes and take them to school to sell, and with the money she would donate the money to the charity, and she didn't want to do anything else. She had no other ambitions to do anything else. She would say to me, "Mum, when I grow up, you're gonna have to find me a rich husband, because I'm not going to earn any money doing the things that I want to do," right? Which was like third world development and charity work and that sort of thing. My background was in the charity sector and the public sector as well, so I think some of that rubbed off on her, but it was from her. She was naturally just a very giving person from a young age, and she's the one that would babysit the kids from the whole family, and would just light up the room when she walked in the room. So Halima and we made a pact that when she'd grow up and she'd graduate from uni, that we would work together. She made me promise. She said, "Mum, when I graduate, you have to promise me that whatever you're doing, you're going to leave that job or whatever, and we're going to work together, and we're going to set up our own charity. We're going to set up a social enterprise." We loved talking about things like the Body Shop model, Anita Roddick's model of business, and businesses that do good, alongside making a profit. So tragically, what happened was that Halima started university. She got onto a dream course of international relations and third world development at Nottingham Trent University, and it was just 6 weeks into her course when tragically she was abducted and murdered by a mental health patient who'd been stalking her just a few streets from where we lived. As you can imagine, that's a leveler, right? Like, everything came crashing down. In fact, on that day, I can tell you as a fact that all the electrical things in our house stopped working. Literally, like, the hairdryer broke, the microwave, the TV, everything electrical stopped working. I think with anything like that, as a parent, you think, you hear things like that on the news and that sort of thing, and you think, you can never imagine yourself in that situation. And I thought if anything like that ever happened to me, that it would literally kill me. It would finish me off. But when it did happen, this massive test that I really didn't think was survivable, what I got was this kind of clarity. I got this clarity, and I knew that what I had to do was to keep that promise, to do the work that me and Halima had agreed to do together. And I didn't know how I'd do it, and I didn't know what I would do, but I just went with my gut. And for the next 3 years, like almost straight away, it was straight after the funeral, we I sat down with my husband and my son, and we agreed that we would set up a charity called the Halimah Trust. And the weird thing is that we already had a bank account called the Halimah Trust. And how that happened was that when Halima was about 13, I went to Pakistan on a trip with my dad. My mum had just had an eye operation, and so she couldn't go with Dad. But my aunt in Karachi in Pakistan was ill, and so I agreed to go with my dad. And when I was there, my cousin in Karachi, he had an empty property, and I was passionate about charity as well, and I saw this empty property, and there were kids on the streets. There were orphans and children trying to sell stuff on the streets, and I made a plan with my cousin to set up a charity there with him, and use that empty property that he had as a kind of a school for orphaned street kids, and just street kids. And when I came back, I told Halima, and she was ecstatic about it, and she said, right, that's what I want to do when I grow up, Mum. So can we call it can we call it something related to me? And so we agreed on the Halimah Trust, and we went down to the bank, the Lloyds TSB bank, together, and we opened this bank account. So when she passed away, we actually had a bank account already called the Halimah Trust. And basically for the next 3 years, we focused on our first project, which was to build a school for orphaned and needy girls in Pakistan. And they'd got a boys' school in this area, but there was no girls' school, and a farmer had donated the field in that area for all the girls in that area. And there were girls in child labour, and there were lots of girls. It was shortly after the big earthquake in Kashmir, so that we're talking 2007, and it was 2006, I think, that earthquake. And there were lots of orphans from there who'd, girls that had gone to school one day, and while they were at school there was an earthquake that caused landslides that completely just submerged their villages, and their whole families, their whole life disappeared, and they came back to nothing. And so our school that we started to build would also be a place for girls from that area as well. The school was completed in 2011, April 2011, and we inaugurated it on the 15th of April. And I was there for a few days, and I saw girls arrive from Kashmir, little girls who, some of them had white hair, like they had white hair from fear or from the shock or whatever they'd been through. And we had a doctor on site who was checking them, and we welcomed them into the school, and they were all, very timid and very afraid, but they came into this beautiful building that was all lovely pastel colours, and it was a state-of-the-art building. We wanted the best, because I thought, why should they, just because they're orphans or from very poor backgrounds, why should they not have a state-of-the-art school? Because all the other sort of schools for orphans look like orphanages, okay? And I didn't want it to look like an orphanage, and I didn't want orphans only. I wanted it to be mixed with girls who have got families but are from poor backgrounds and also orphans, and they would all wear the same clothes, and they would all look the same, and they would all be treated the same. And so we had accommodation there for the orphans, and we had a really amazing inauguration event. And within 2 or 3 days, these girls were all talking to each other and making friends, and they looked different even after 3 days. So after the inauguration, I was on my way back to England. I was sitting in the airport lounge in Lahore and thinking, right, I'd reached this milestone. We've set up the project for Halimah, and we've done a lot more with the Halimah Trust since then, and we've worked in different parts of the world and done all kinds of projects, but that was the first one. That's our flagship project. And now, as well as a school, we also have a college, because the girls, as they grew up and went through the school, they then wanted to go to college, and who's going to send them to college, right? So we built them a college next to the school, and the next step, of course, is now they want to go to uni. So we're thinking, okay, are we going to have to build a university campus? So we are actually talking to other universities in the region about kind of partnering with them and maybe having a satellite of their university on our campus, but that's for the future. So I was sitting in this airport lounge and I was thinking, okay, we've reached this milestone, what's next? And I thought, whatever I was going to do, I knew I'd never go back to work for anyone, right? Because previous to all of this, I'd always worked in a job. I'd done work in the public sector, in the government sector, and I was the CEO of a national charity when Halimah passed away. And at that point, I knew that I'd never be able to work for anyone else again. I knew whatever I did, it had to be working for myself, because there was no guarantee that I would feel 100% every day. That there'd be days when I just want to. It still happens when I just want to wallow, and think about. I don't wallow in grief in that way, in a negative way. But there are days when I just want to be by myself, or just want some thinking time or space and time with my family. And at that time, I knew, I wouldn't be able to guarantee that I'd want to get out of bed every morning and go early to work and be ready for the media or anything like that. So I picked up this magazine from a table that was in front of me in this airport lounge, and I think it was Time magazine, Time, and as I opened it, it opens like I randomly opened it, and it opened onto this page, which was an article about women in the Sanitary Syrian refugee camp. So this is one of the refugee camps on the border of Syria and Turkey. So the war was raging at that time, and this article described the plight of women in the Sanitary Syrian refugee camp, who were, they were forced into tearing strips off the bottom of their abayas, their dresses, and folding them up, folding these pieces of cloth that they'd torn off into makeshift sanitary pads, right? And all the other horrific things they had to suffer, they were scared to go to the loo. They were scared to go to the toilets in the camp because there was a fear that they'd be assaulted. they had to do some really horrific things to survive, like make sexual exchanges in exchange for food, right? Do sexual favours in exchange for food to feed their children, and lots of other horrible things. So when I read that part about how they had to tear strips off their clothes to use as pads, use as makeshift sanitary pads, at that moment, I saw myself giving pads to these women. I saw that vision that me and Halima had all those years ago, and it was the sort of thing that we would talk about. You know, she was a bit of an activist as well, and I knew that at that moment that that's what I was going to do. I didn't know how, I didn't know where I would start, but I had that vision in the future of me giving pads to these women. And then the rest of it was a technicality, I guess. You know, it was I'd never done business before, as I say, and I didn't know how I would get to that point, but I knew that that's what I was going to do, and that was the birth of Gift Wellness. So that's part one of my story. I'm sorry it was a bit sad, but I promise you it is a story of hope and joy and such positive energy. You know, we have 850 girls at the Halimah School and the Halimah College now, who many of them would have been on the streets or dead, you know. So I really believe that everything happens for a reason, and we're keeping Halimah's dream alive, and she is in everything that I do. So she's my inspiration. So, you know, I guess the moral of the story is that, you know, when you know, a lot of people nowadays are having a hard time. Like we've been through some really difficult times, especially over the last couple of years. I'm working with a lot of young people, and they've had it especially hard. And what I try to tell everyone is that, you know, use your test. So use your test that you've been given to actually fuel your positivity. So channel that negativity into something positive. That's what I did, and I think that the harder you are tested, the better you will be. I think the harder your test, the more potential you have. So be grateful for your test. How about that? I'm grateful for my test, believe it or not. I am. You know, obviously I miss my daughter every day, every minute. But if Halima had been here today, she would have graduated from uni, and she'd be in some working in some charity, maybe to get some experience before we went into, and we would have done something together, but nothing at this scale, nothing like what we've achieved, you know, and what she has achieved. So you know, I really mean it when I say that if you have had a tragedy, a hard few months, a hard few years, you've lost someone, you've suffered something grave, don't think that is going to define you in a negative way. That will define you in a positive way. That will become your reason it's not only healing when you focus on helping others, it goes beyond healing. It actually transforms you, and it makes you the person that you were supposed to be. And that's where I find myself now. I actually know myself better now than I ever have, and I've found my true purpose in life. So I hope that wasn't too heavy, and I hope that it's given you food for thought. And if you can just take one thing from it, that thing about the harder your test, the better you will become, then see how that can apply to you. So thank you very much. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Check out our products. Go to giftwellness.co.uk and find us on social media, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.